The Union Hill Cemetery is a rustic, unfrequented church cemetery that is the resting place of 6 Civil War soldiers. Its location is more secluded compared to Civil War memorials at cemeteries such as Woodlawn and Mound City. But before we go into more depth on the cemetery, you should know a little background, starting back in the warm, humid August of 1852. In 1852, 3 men, Daniel Brush, John Connor, and Dr. William Richard, invested in 360 acres of land along the Illinois Central Railroad with the intent of establishing a new community. They took interest into the Industrial Revolution and the spreading and expansion of railroads, and looked to make a prosperous town. They favorably positioned Carbondale between 2 railroad stations that today are well known in the local area as Makanda and DeSoto. The railroad was a significant factor in the creation of towns, and when the first train came through the northern town Cairo on Independence Day in 1854, the community was elated. Not even 10 years later, the United States split up in revolt and the Civil War broke out. By 1861, Carbondale was a blossoming town and had a rough population of about 1,150 residents. Majority of the Carbondale population were Union sympathizers, meaning they sided with the North and their primary goal of keeping the United States together as a whole. This reason, although still evident, was later surpassed by that of abolishing slavery. Carbondale took part in this war, sending 250 men to fight for the Union. Prominent Carbondale citizens who fought for the Union Army were Brush, Connor, and General John A. Logan. 55 Carbondale men died in this war, and majority of their resting grounds are in Mound City and Woodlawn Cemetery. Woodlawn celebrated the first Memorial Day on April 29, 1866. Every year, on Memorial Day, white crosses are put on the graves of those who fought for our country. The Union Hill Church honors their soldiers as well, although unless you attend the church, you are not aware of their act. The Union Hill Church was established in 1864, and although the church itself has been rebuilt many times, the cemetery, about a quarter-mile behind it, has not. It remains in its rustic and authentic shape, and that is what makes this cemetery so overwhelming when you visit. The latest burial that was recorded took place in 1899, and the stones and where they were set remain untouched. Many of the names and dates have been weathered away from countless storms, rains, and sun, but their presence still signifies something greater. The area is overgrown with plants, vines, and branches, but you can still see the headstones and makings of a graveyard where families buried the ones they loved, as well as 6 Civil War soldiers. On August 26, 1862, 6 soldiers from Murfreesboro were mustered into the 81st Illinois Infantry, Company B. They fought for the Union and are buried in the Union Hill Graveyard. No clear markers representing these soldiers are legible or present, yet records indicate they are buried there. Only 3 pension records were available, that of Ashton Brewer, Jonathan Wiseman, and William Braswell. Ashton Brewer was a private whose death is unclear. Jonathan Wiseman was a private who died of an unknown sickness. William Braswell, a corporal captured at Guntown, Mississippi, and is buried at the cemetery accompanied by his relative Jacob Braswell, also ranked a corporal. 2 other men who are buried in the cemetery were W.M. Rollins and J.M. Davis. Information for these 2 young men were difficult to find, but all of these men fought for the reuniting of our country and lost their lives before the age of 21. How did these men come to rest in the Union Hill Cemetery? Pieces of their lives in the Civil War era remain missing, but we are aware that sickness and disease was the primary killer of the Civil War, not the battles themselves. Conditions were harsh, sanitation poor, medical science was primitive and barbaric, with most injuries leading to amputations. Alcohol, such as whiskey, was the leading painkiller and medicine. The lives and deaths of these men are unclear, similar to the markers that represent them in death, faded, distorted, unknown, like the pieces of a puzzle you've had for years, frayed, torn, with pieces missing, lost for a small eternity.
If you're reading this, my mama's sitting there. Looks like I only got a one-way ticket over here. I sure wish I could give you one more kiss. And war was just a game we played when we were kids. Well, I'm laying down my gun, I'm hanging up my boots. I'm up here with God and we're both watching over you. So lay in that open field out on the edge of town. And oh, my soul, it's where my mom always prayed that it would go. But if you're reading this, I'm already home. If you're reading this halfway around the world, I won't be there to see the birth of our little girl. I hope she looks like you. I hope she fights like me and stands up for the innocent and the weak. I'm laying down my gun, hanging up my boots. Tell Dad I don't regret that I followed in his shoes. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town. And oh, my soul, it's where my mom always prayed that it would go. If you're reading this, I'm all